That's a huge bitch!
ShinRobjira.
Today we're going to be talking about the Jakks-specific, gigantic-sized Godzilla 2014 figure. Jakks-specific kicked off their short run with Godzilla in 2014 with this big boy. Standing at a rousing 24 inches tall and 43 inches long, this big ol' shelf-hogging lug is the largest Godzilla figure ever sold in the US of A. And despite their KOTM line being what it was, this figure honestly ain't too bad. It ain't bad at all. Aside from the leftover gimmick that was never completed, and originally, apparently, the figure was supposed to be even bigger, standing at a rousing 31 inches in height to match the other large-scale figures from Jakks-specific. As we all know, clearly there was supposed to be an electronic sound effects gimmick, and apparently, according to Wikizilla, this was even supposed to have an atomic breath feature at one point. But despite all those could-have-beens and what-ifs, I'm honestly pretty happy with what we got. And just to clarify, this is the 2014 release. This isn't the KOTM release, which I just learned recently. Apparently has a different paint scheme to it. Nothing crazy, but I think they changed up the brown on the tummy over here. Anybody who has that, please let me know so I know. But anyway, let's talk about paint and detail, because there's quite a lot to talk about in terms of detail. So right up front, Godzilla looks pretty dang accurate and kind of relaxed. I don't know, something about how his face looks, maybe it's his eyes or just the goofy little grin that he has. He just looks pleasant, you know? Looks like he's happy to be here. The pupils for the eyes surprisingly look pretty even. Honestly, I spent most of my time owning this figure thinking that they weren't all that even, but looking at them now, they're pretty dang close. Also, I have to give nothing but respect to this tannish brown dry brushing that they did on Goji's head up here, as well as at the top of his neck, and even on the side of his head and neck. Yeah, it's not X+ quality levels of paint, but for $50 and a cheap plastic figure, that looks pretty dang good, nah? Back to this passive and neutral pose, we can see that we have some painted teeth over here, and from the front they look pretty good. Don't worry, we'll get to what they look like on this side after we open up Godzilla's mouth, revealing this pink and red, very spongy looking tongue. Unfortunately, the tongue is not spongy, it is hard plastic. And even with the mouth open, the teeth look pretty dang good, especially on the bottom over here. I do wish something could have been done with the inside of the mouth, but I guess I really can't expect much. Wowzers, is that a tooth or a melted marshmallow? Honestly, it really doesn't look that bad, even for its budgeted price. I really can't knock this thing for some of its questionable paint applications. I'm of the camp that the opposite side looks a lot better, honestly. Yeah. And I must bring a lot of attention to the detail on the head as well. We've got bumps, we've got grooves, we've got gills, we've got scales. It all looks very, very good. You know, you really gotta wonder where all this passion and all this attention to detail went for their KOTM line. Yeah, I'm still of a particular belief that Jakks-specific might have gotten the short end of a last-minute stick with Toho, because when you look at Jakks-specific's other products, say their Sonic series that they do, those things look really, really good. This thing looks really, really good. Why would they specifically drop the ball with KOTM? I don't know, I'm still of the belief that they might have had that dropped on them. But anyway. Moving below the mouth to the neck to the upper part of the torso, you can see that this brown dry brushing gets a lot more intense on the lower neck going into the torso. And I think it shows up a lot better over here as opposed to over here, because the head, the neck, and the mouth, that's all a softer rubber. It's not really much of a plastic. And yeah, that paint do be showing up rather nice on the front of the torso. And it honestly just keeps getting better as you move down towards Godzilla's Godzilla over here. Just magnificent looking stuff. I swear I'm talking about the paint and the detail, not Godzilla's package. Gotta give even more credit to Jakks-specific for actually painting all the way to the base of the tail over here. So basically, this brown paint is on every little bit of plastic, unfortunately not on every bit of rubber. While subtle, I really do think this looks really, really good, and I really, really wish this was present on other parts of Godzilla's body. But hey, what can you do? Now when it comes to paint, that's pretty much it. Eyes, teeth, tongue, and the dry brushing that coats his underbelly, his head, and even his crotch region. Every other thing we're going to be talking about from here on out is going to be details. So, I'll be honest, I'm gonna give paint a solid star. 50 bucks, cheap plastic figure. This looks a lot better than it should, but based on what era you grew up in, it definitely could have looked better by our standards. Because back in the day, getting a figure this large meant you got more paint, not less paint. But I'm going to stop sounding like a boomer, and we're going to go back to talking about the detail. Yeah, it's just nut from here on out, everybody. Look at all of this beautiful detail. Translates into plastic very, very well. And even though these dorsal fins are all this very light and malleable rubber, they themselves feature some detail too. Granted, not the craziest amounts of detail, but detail nonetheless. Man, these things would have looked really, really cool with a light shade of blue on them. My, what could have been. But anyway, let's move down. The detail on Godzilla's feet and legs over here is magnificent. Jakks Pacific went hard on the Goji legs. Honestly, I think they went pretty hard on the Goji feet too. Yeah, I know not everybody's a big fan of the 2014 elephant feet, but I like them. I think they were a cool little realistic change for Godzilla. And I think they look really cool here with all the bells and whistles of detail and everything. Save for a bit on the dustier side. I thought I cleaned these pretty well, but apparently I didn't. I am still just in awe of these Goji Thunder thighs. They look magnificent. Moving on to the arms, they're not as detailed as the legs are, and they are of that harder plastic. But I guess what is there is nice. I'm gonna have to sing my praises for the hands though, because the detail on these is just magnificent. No matter the angle to which you turn them, you will be met with some very nice looking details. And again, I have to praise Jakks Pacific for that. Now, in looking at Godzilla from the back side over here, you're going to get a little bit more of the same. And thankfully, a little bit more of the same in this guy's case is much more of a positive thing than it is a negative thing, because you're still going to get some amazing looking detail on this tail and his back. The tail, personally, looks magnificent with that very gator-inspired armored plating that he's got going on. And you can see that the dorsal fins still have some attempt of detail on them, which I do, yet again, have to give Jakks Pacific credit for. Another thing to give them credit for is just the fact that there is so much detail on the underside of the tail over here as well. And not just on the thicker portion, it will also be on the mid portion of the tail and at the tip portion of the tail as well, which I did have to take off just to fit this guy on the table so I can look at him frontways. But as you can see, all the same detail, all the same quality. It looks nice. Let's move on. This kind of looks like a butt plug. Butt plug. Actually, before we move on, I do just want to cover more of this brown dry brushing that I wasn't able to show in full before. It goes all the way to the base of the tail, and it looks really, really cool. And we got all these dots over here. Now, bear with me real quick, but I think these might have been a secondary speaker, second to the one that's over here, that would have let the sound out of Godzilla's gooch over here, but they weren't fully punched out because the sound wasn't completed for this thing. But that might be what they are. I mean, they're not really in any other major space except for over here, so I think that's entirely possible. But anyway, taking a look at Godzilla's foot over here, we can see Toho, trademark, Warner Brothers Entertainment, 2014, Jakks Pacific, blah 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 blah. We will get nothing but some nice looking detail on the bottom of the other foot though. And just to cover the rest of the back, since I did kind of gloss over it beforehand, you can see there's even some nice details on the back of Godzilla's back, even on the back of his head, in between all the dorsal fins, on the dorsal fins. Jakks Pacific knocked this out of the park, and I really, really wish they just would have done another version of this with the more KOTM looking dorsal fins for their KOTM line. That would have been fantastic. Jaconomus Rollingus is a cuntinus. Oh. Paint got a solid star, and I'm going to give detail a solid star as well. This guy, in his huge size, is absolutely stacked on all of it. Yet again, impressive. Something worthy of praise for Jakks Pacific. Now the only other thing left to talk about is indeed the articulation, and surprisingly, this guy has a lot. Like a lot. Butt plug. So starting all the way at the tip of the tail over here, you're going to get a swivel. Moving on into the butt plug portion of Godzilla's tail, you're going to get another swivel. Moving on to the midsection of Godzilla's tail, you're going to get this hinge over here that will allow the tail to go back and forth, like a tail swipe attack kind of a deal. Just showing this from an upward angle. And as far as I know, the tail cannot turn at the base over here. Much like the Playmates figures, these legs can only go so far forward and so far back. And in all honesty, I'm not bummed out about that because a figure this big, I mean, his presence in and of itself is a pose. And we're going to get a rather lovely ankle swivel at the feet. At the arms over here, we can go this far up and this far down. We will also get a swivel at the wrist over here. And as demonstrated prior, the mouth can open and close. And I don't think I've ever done this before, but the head can also go all the way around. I was actually terrified doing that, not gonna lie. And that is pretty much that with Articulation. 3 solid stars for massive Jakks-specific Goji, and a very high recommend. Whether you get this version or the KOTM version, just do it if you can get it for a good price. And in all honesty, we need more large 2014 styled Godzilla figures. Bandai, King Series, can you do that for me, please? But yeah, that's about going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for watching. Patrons, thank you so much for being patrons. If you want to become a patron or check out my social media, you can do so in the description below with all those links. There's also a link to my merch page there. And this outro is taking long enough. Buy yourself a gigantic Jakks-specific Goji figure if you can find it for a good enough price. I have been ShinRobjira. Rob's Godzilla Room Reviews Oddities arc is ending with the next major video with Rob's Godzilla Room Reviews in the title. Goodbye, and I love you all.